March 26, 1991. It was a calm spring morning in Daegu, South Korea. 5 boys left their homes to search for salamander eggs in the nearby mountains. They said they'd be back by lunch. They never returned. Their names were Chulwon, Hoyeon, Youngyu, Chonin, and Jongsik. All from the same school, the same neighborhood. The youngest was just 9. They carried plastic containers and wore light jackets. They had no reason to be afraid. It was an election day, declared a public holiday. The streets were unusually quiet. Parents stayed home. The boys slipped out unnoticed, their laughter fading into the trees. No one imagined they were walking into history. By noon, the families started to worry. Lunch was ready, but no one came home. At first, they assumed the boys had gone to a friend's house. But by evening, panic set in. The boys had vanished without a trace. They were last seen heading toward Waryong Mountain, just behind their homes. It was a familiar trail, one they'd walked many times before. No surveillance cameras, no witnesses. Just a quiet path into the woods. Then nothing. And silence began to spread. That evening, the police received the first missing child report. Then 4 more. What started as a local concern quickly became a national emergency. Flyers went up, phone lines lit up, but the forest remained silent. Search teams combed the mountains for days. Helicopters, search dogs, volunteers. Over 35,000 people joined the operation, the largest in South Korean history. But not a single clue was found. No clothing, no footprints, nothing. The boys' families handed out flyers across the country. They appeared on TV begging for help. Some quit their jobs. Others mortgaged their homes. Every street corner became a place of hope and heartbreak. They refused to give up. Somewhere along the way, the story changed. People stopped calling them salamander boys. They became known as the Frog Boys, a name that stuck. But it wasn't just a nickname. It became a national scar. Years passed. 1992, 1994, 1999. Seasons changed. Leads dried up. But the families never stopped searching. And then, on September 26, 2002, the mountain gave them back. A shallow grave was discovered in Waryong Mountain, barely covered by dirt and leaves. 5 sets of remains, buried together, tangled in their clothes. They weren't scattered by nature. Someone had placed them there, together. The items found beside the bones were unmistakable. A child's plastic container, torn shoes, clothes still identifiable by school logos. Time hadn't erased who they were. It only proved how long they'd been missing. At first, police announced the cause of death as exposure. They claimed the boys had gotten lost and frozen. But it had rained that day, and the boys weren't far from home. And the burial looked intentional. The explanation didn't sit right. Forensic teams from Kyungpook National University were brought in. Their conclusion shocked the country. This was no accident. Each skull had suffered trauma, sharp, repetitive, and consistent. They ruled it a homicide, and the hunt for a killer began. The skulls told a strange story. Not one massive blow, but several, each the same shape and size. The damage wasn't chaotic, but patterned, almost like someone had struck with a tool, again and again. Theories poured in. A hammer, a pickaxe, a metal pipe. But none of those matched the exact shape or limited fracture spread. The wounds were too precise, too clean. Then a post appeared on an internet forum. It was simple, almost casual. I know what the murder weapon was. People clicked, and what they read changed everything. The poster compared the skull fractures with a metal tool, a vernier caliper, slim, heavy, pointed at the tips. Not a weapon, but capable of leaving those exact marks. It made sense. He explained why no one had suspected it before. A hammer crushes, a caliper presses, and when swung, it doesn't break the skull, it indents. The same size. Every time. Precision, not rage. The theory spread fast. For the first time, people could picture what happened. Not a random killer, not a monster, just a kid with something in his school bag and no control. The question was obvious. Why would a vernier caliper be in the middle of the woods? The poster answered quickly. Because at the time, technical high school students carried them daily. It was part of their curriculum, always in their bags. There was one such school, just a short walk from the mountain. A vocational high school known for metalwork and design. First-year students were issued calipers during tool training. It wasn't unusual for them to carry them home, and no one questioned it. The poster painted a vivid scene. A group of high school students, skipping class, sniffing glue in the woods. Back then, inhalant abuse among teens was widespread in South Korea. They weren't just wandering, they were high and dangerously unpredictable. The younger boys may have crossed paths with them. Maybe they stared. Maybe they ran. Something triggered a reaction. A confrontation escalated, and violence took over. One older teen pulled out the caliper, swung it, hit one of the boys in the head. Blood spilled. The younger kids screamed. Panic spread among both groups. The rest was chaos. Blow after blow. Each strike hit the same part of the skull. Some held the victims down, others attacked. Not out of hatred, but adrenaline and fear. Afterwards, they buried the bodies shallow, barely covered with leaves and dirt. It wasn't a careful crime. It was desperate. They were high schoolers, not killers. until that day. The idea might have been dismissed until criminal psychologist Dr. Lee Soo-jung weighed in. "I was moved," she said. "The injuries don't look like blunt trauma. They match something pointed, measured." She elaborated. "Hammers cause splintering. Calipers leave piercing dents. Repeated, deliberate." The forensic consistency supported the theory. Even without a confession, the wounds told a story. Still, no one investigated the nearby school. No former students were ever questioned. The list of potential suspects, it was never made. And by then, the statute of limitations was closing in. Then came another post, anonymous, cryptic. "It was us. We buried them again. On April 14th, closer to the village." No one knew if it was real, but people paid attention. He described a detail that wasn't public. A slipper, left behind during the first burial. He said it would still be there, buried under shallow dirt, closer than anyone had searched. He mentioned tools, a shovel from a nearby house, and something metal and sharp from a school bag. The post disappeared within hours, but screenshots had already spread. He ended with a single line. "We were 16. We were scared." Some called it a prank. Others said it was too specific to be fake. Police never followed up. The truth is, nobody investigated local teens back then. No interviews, no school records checked. The focus was on serial killers, strangers in the woods, not troubled boys from the neighborhood. Why? Because the idea of children killing children was unthinkable. Because the media craved a villain, not a tragedy. The police stayed quiet. They never reopened the case, even after the forensics pointed to murder. Public trust faded. Families were left in limbo. Some speculated about a psychopath, a killer who waited in the woods. But Waryong Mountain isn't remote. It's small, near homes. That theory never really fit. Others blamed a teacher, someone the kids trusted. But again, no evidence, no patterns, no motive, just desperation for answers. What made the most sense was the hardest to accept. A group of local teens, high, armed with tools they didn't fully understand, caught in a moment they couldn't undo, and then silent forever. A vernier caliper, slim, cold, ordinary. A tool used to measure millimeters, not meant to kill, but in the wrong hands, it became something else. The wounds were too precise to be random, too consistent to be coincidence. 3 skulls, each marked in the same way. This wasn't rage. It was repetition. Waryong Mountain still stands. The trail is quiet, The trees still whisper. Tourists hike it now, never knowing what lies beneath. But some do remember. The boys were just playing, hunting salamander eggs with empty containers and spring jackets. They weren't rebels or runaways. They had no idea their childhood would end that day, in a shallow grave. Their families still walk those trails. Some leave flowers, others light candles. They don't expect justice anymore, just remembrance. The statute of limitations has long expired. No charges can ever be filed. But that doesn't mean the truth is gone. Sometimes silence speaks louder, especially when it's shared. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened. Someone still dreams about that mountain. Maybe they were 16. Maybe they still carry it. If it were your brother, your child, your friend, would you accept this silence? Or would you still be searching? Chulwon, Hoyeon, Younggu, Chan-in, Jongsik. 5 names etched into a nation's memory. 5 skulls, 1 strange tool, 30 years of questions, and still no justice.